The old alien sat alone in the dark corner of the bar. His body was covered in hard blue-green shell pieces that looked like armor. Most of his kind had 4 arms, but he only had 3 now. Where his left arm should have been, there was just empty space and old scars. Commander Zeth-Kalar stared into his glass of purple liquid. The drink tasted bitter, just like his memories. Other aliens in the bar looked at him sometimes, but they always looked away quickly. Everyone knew about the scars. Everyone whispered about what happened to him. The bar was on a space station far from any major planets. It was the kind of place where old soldiers came to forget. The lights were dim, and the air smelled like engine oil and cheap alcohol. Perfect for someone who wanted to hide from the rest of the galaxy. A young female alien walked over to his table. She was the same species as him, with bright green shell pieces and all 4 arms still attached. Her uniform was clean and new. She was probably fresh out of military school. "Commander Zeth-Kalar?" she asked in a quiet voice. "My name is Sub-Commander Yil Thanks. I serve on the battleship Thunder of Victory." Zeth-Kalar did not look up from his drink. "Go away, youngling. Find someone else to bother." But the young officer did not leave. She sat down across from him at the small metal table. "Sir, I heard stories about you. About the war with the humans 15 years ago." Now Zeth-Kalar looked at her, his large compound eyes focused on her face. "What kind of stories?" "They say you fought against Earth. They say you were there when the 7th Fleet tried to conquer the human home world." She paused, then added more quietly, "They say the humans did terrible things to our forces." Zeth-Kalar laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Terrible things? Is that what they teach you younglings now? The War College says humans are primitive. They say humans are weak and disorganized. They fight among themselves all the time. Their technology is hundreds of years behind ours." She leaned forward. "But the stories I hear from older soldiers are different. What do those stories say?" "They say the humans are monsters. They say they fight like demons. They say they never surrender, even when they should." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "They say the humans cost us more ships in 1 week than we lost in 50 years of other wars." Zeth-Kalar finished his drink and set the glass down hard on the table. The sound made several other customers look their way. "You want to know about humans, Sub-Commander? You really want to know?" She nodded. "Then listen carefully. And do not interrupt me." He raised one of his remaining arms to get the bartender's attention. "Another drink. Make it a double." When the new drink arrived, Zeth-Kalar began his story. 15 years ago, I was captain of the destroyer Sharp Victory. I was young then like you. I believed in the Empire. I believed in our superiority over all other species in the galaxy." He took a long drink before continuing. "The Vraxian Empire had conquered 47 worlds by that time. Some fought us. Some surrendered without a battle. But they all became part of our empire in the end. It was the natural order of things. We were stronger, smarter, and more advanced than everyone else." Yil Thanks listened without speaking. "Then our scouts found Earth, a small blue planet with 1 moon, orbiting a yellow star. The intelligence reports said the humans had just discovered faster-than-light travel 50 of their years before. They were still using chemical rockets and nuclear fusion for power. Their weapons were primitive projectiles that threw metal bullets." Zeth-Kalar's voice became bitter. "The reports said humans were divided into hundreds of small nations. They fought wars against each other constantly. They could not even agree on basic things like government or religion. The intelligence officers called them chaotic and undisciplined. That matches what we learn in school." Yil Thanks said, "Yes, well, your schools are run by idiots who never faced a human in battle." He took another drink. Admiral Keth Morvek decided Earth would be an easy conquest. A good training mission for new officers. He assembled the 7th Subjugation Fleet, 200 battleships, 500 cruisers, and 50,000 ground troops. The young officer's eyes widened. That many ships for one primitive world. The admiral said it was better to use too much force than too little. He wanted to make sure the humans surrendered quickly. Minimum casualties on both sides, very civilized. Zeph Kalar paused to watch a group of alien traders at another table. They were laughing about something. He remembered when he used to laugh. Like that. I commanded a destroyer in the Advanced Reconnaissance Squadron. Our job was simple. Jump into the human system, disable their orbital defenses, and wait for the main fleet to arrive. The humans would see our superior numbers and technology, then surrender, just like every other species had done before. But that is not what happened, Yulthank's guessed. No, that is not what happened at all. Zeph Kalar's voice became distant, as if he was seeing the events again in his mind. We dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of their solar system. 12 destroyers against a handful of primitive human patrol ships. He shook his head slowly. The first thing that confused us was their response to our arrival. Most species either run away or try to communicate when they see warships appear in their system. The humans did neither. What did they do? They started playing music. Yulthanks blinked her large eyes. Music? Loud, aggressive music. Something called rock and roll. The lead human ship was broadcasting a song called Fortunate Son on all frequencies. My communications officer asked if it was some kind of code or battle signal. I told him it was probably just panic behavior. Zeph Kalar finished his second drink and immediately ordered a third. The first engagement happened near their fourth planet. Mars, they called it. A single human frigate named Liberty faced off against 3 of our destroyers. Standard Imperial doctrine said the battle would last maybe 5 minutes. The human ship was tiny compared to ours. It had weak shields and primitive weapons. But Captain Jake Morrison of the Liberty had other ideas. Instead of keeping his distance and trying to run away, he did something completely insane. He aimed his ship directly at us and accelerated to maximum speed. The old commander's remaining arms moved as he spoke, showing the positions of the ships in that long-ago battle. My fellow captain, Velthaker of the Piercing Talon, could not believe what he was seeing. The human ship was taking massive damage from our plasma cannons. Its hull was melting. Atmosphere was venting into space. Any rational crew would have surrendered or tried to escape. What happened? Morrison rammed us. His ship crashed directly into the Piercing Talon at full speed. The human's fusion reactor went critical on impact. Both ships were destroyed instantly. Zeph Kalar stared at his new drink without touching it. That was our first lesson about humans, Sub-Commander. They do not think like other species. They do not follow the rules of civilized warfare. When faced with superior firepower, they do not surrender. He looked directly at her. They get creative. Zeph Kalar finally picked up his third drink and took a small sip. The purple liquid burned his throat, but he barely noticed. His mind was back in space, 15 years ago, watching human ships do impossible things. After the Liberty rammed the Piercing Talon, we thought it was just one crazy human captain, he continued. We told ourselves it was an accident. Maybe their ship's controls were damaged, and they could not turn away in time. Sub-Commander Yulthanks leaned forward in her chair. But it was not an accident. No, it was not. Zeph Kalar's compound eyes grew darker. The next human ship we encountered was a small cruiser called the Defiant. Captain Lisa Rodriguez was in command. She had seen what happened to the Liberty. She had watched Morrison sacrifice his ship and crew to destroy a Vraxian destroyer. The old veteran paused to watch a group of alien merchants arguing loudly at the bar. Their voices reminded him of his own crew, back when he still had a crew to command. Rodriguez did not try to ram us. She tried something else. Something that made even less sense at the time. He turned back to Yilthanks. She hid. Hid? In space? In the debris field left by the two destroyed ships. The Defiant powered down all systems except life support. No engines, no weapons, no shields. Just floating metal among the wreckage of the Liberty and the piercing Talon. Zeth Kalar moved his glass in small circles on the table, watching the liquid swirl. We thought the Defiant was destroyed. Our sensors could not tell the difference between a powered-down ship and a piece of debris, so we moved closer to examine the wreckage. Standard procedure when investigating battle damage. That was a mistake, the biggest mistake of my career. The old commander's voice became bitter. When our cruiser Deep Strike got within 2 kilometers of the debris field, the Defiant suddenly came alive. All systems activated at once. Captain Rodriguez fired everything she had at point-blank range. Yilthanks made a small sound of surprise. 4 plasma torpedoes hit the Deep Strike's reactor core. The ship exploded so fast that the crew never had time to send a distress signal. Rodriguez destroyed a ship twice the size of hers by using our own tactics against us. Zeth Kalar drank again, trying to wash away the taste of old fear. But the Defiant was badly damaged in the fight. Rodriguez's ship was venting atmosphere and losing power. Any reasonable captain would have tried to escape or surrender. Instead, she sent a message to all human ships in the area. What kind of message? Technical data. Rodriguez transmitted detailed information about Vraxian shield, frequencies, weapon power levels, and reactor designs. She had learned all of this from her attack on the Deep Strike. Then she shared it with every human in the system. The young officer's eyes widened. She gave away military secrets? She gave away our military secrets. In the middle of a battle. While her own ship was dying, Rodriguez was teaching other humans how to kill us more effectively. Zeth Kalar shook his head. 3 minutes later, the Defiant's reactor overloaded and the ship was destroyed. But the damage was already done. What happened next? Every human ship in the system suddenly became twice as dangerous. They knew exactly where to aim their weapons for maximum damage. They knew how to penetrate our shields. They knew which parts of our ships were most vulnerable. Zeth Kalar gestured with one of his remaining arms, indicating the empty space where his 4th limb used to be. Captain Ben Carter of a converted cargo ship called the Free Spirit used Rodriguez's data to destroy my ship's weapon systems with a single shot. Then he did something even more insane than ramming us. What? He tried to board us. Yilthanks made a choking sound. A cargo ship tried to board a military destroyer? Carter's ship was not designed for combat. It was a civilian freighter that had been hastily converted with welded armor plates and jury-rigged weapons. But Carter had loaded it with armed humans and mining explosives. The old veteran rubbed the stump where his left arm used to be. The Free Spirit attached itself to our hull like a parasite. Carter's crew cut through our armor with industrial cutting tools. 30 humans in basic spacesuits invaded my ship. How did they get past your security forces? That is the terrifying part. They did not fight like soldiers. They fought like workers solving a problem. Zeth Kalar's voice became quiet. My security troops were trained to fight other military forces. Organized units with clear command structures and predictable tactics. He paused to take another drink. The humans split into small groups and spread throughout my ship. They did not try to capture the bridge or the engine room like proper invaders. Instead, they went after our life support systems, our computer cores, and our weapon control stations. They were sabotaging your ship. Worse than that, they were learning how it worked. Every human carried recording equipment. They were documenting everything they saw, taking pictures of our technology, copying our computer files, measuring our equipment. Zeth Kalar's remaining hands clenched into fists. I led a counterattack to retake the engine room. We cornered 5 humans near the main reactor. They were outnumbered 3-1, armed with only basic tools and explosives. Any rational enemy would have surrendered, but humans are not rational. The leader was a female named Amy Foster. She had been a mining engineer before the war started. When she saw us coming, she smiled, actually smiled. Then she activated a device that looked like a mining charge. The old commander's voice became very quiet. Foster had turned our own reactor into a bomb. She gave us a choice. Leave the ship immediately, or everyone dies when the reactor explodes. What did you do? We left. My entire crew abandoned our own ship to escape a handful of humans with improvised explosives. Zeth Kalar's voice was filled with shame. As we evacuated, Foster's team continued their work. They copied our navigation database, our communication codes, and our tactical manuals. Did they escape? Foster and her team stayed behind to make sure the reactor did not actually explode. They had no way off the ship. Carter's freighter had been destroyed by our defensive fire during the boarding action. He paused. But they had already transmitted everything they learned to other human vessels. Zeth Kalar finished his drink and stared at the empty glass. By the end of the first day, every human in the system knew more about Vraxian technology than most of our own engineers. They were building new weapons, modifying their ships, and developing tactics specifically designed to counter our advantages. He looked up at Yil Thanks with haunted eyes. We came to conquer a primitive species. Instead, we became their teachers. Every battle, every encounter, every destroyed ship gave them more knowledge about how to fight us. How long did this continue? 3 more days. 3 days of watching humans turn our own technology against us. 3 days of fighting an enemy that got smarter and deadlier with every passing hour. Zeth Kalar raised his remaining arm to signal the bartender for another drink. And that was before the main fleet arrived. The bartender brought Zeth Kalar his 4th drink of the evening. The old alien's movements were getting slower, but his mind was sharp. The memories were too clear, too painful to be dulled by alcohol. 3 days after the reconnaissance began, Admiral Keth Morvik arrived with the main fleet, Zeth Kalar continued. 200 battleships, 500 cruisers, and enough firepower to crack a planet in half. Sub-Commander Yil Thanks shifted in her chair. Surely the humans surrendered. When they saw so many ships, you would think so. Any reasonable species would have looked at those odds and given up immediately. Zeth Kalar laughed bitterly. But we had already learned that humans are not reasonable. He took a small sip of his drink before continuing. The Admiral was not worried about our losses during reconnaissance. He called it acceptable casualties for intelligence gathering. He said the humans had revealed their capabilities and positions. Now it was time for the real war to begin. What was the Admiral's plan? Standard Imperial doctrine. Broadcast a surrender demand, then demonstrate overwhelming force. If the enemy still refused to yield, we would begin orbital bombardment of their major cities. This approach had worked on every other world we conquered. Zeth Kalar's compound. Eyes grew distant as he remembered. The surrender demand was sent to all human governments on Earth. The Admiral gave them 6 hours to respond. He expected them to argue among themselves, then eventually choose survival over pride. But they did not argue. No, they did something we had never seen before. All the human nations stopped fighting each other and united against us. In less than 4 hours, they had formed something called the United Earth Defense Force. The old veteran moved his remaining arms to show the formation of the human fleet. Their response came from General Patricia Stone. She was speaking for all of humanity when she sent our Admiral a message. I still remember her exact words. Yil Thanks leaned forward. What did she say? She said, "We decline your generous offer of slavery. How about you turn around and go home, and we will pretend this never happened." Zeth Kalar shook his head. The Admiral was so insulted that he ordered immediate bombardment of the planet. That should have ended the war quickly. It should have. For 6 hours, the entire 7th Fleet rained plasma fire on Earth's surface. We targeted their cities, their military bases, their factories. We destroyed their orbital stations and their communication satellites. Zeth Kalar paused to watch 2 alien traders arguing over a business deal at a nearby table. Their voices seemed loud and harsh compared to the quiet conversation he was having with the young officer. After 6 hours of bombardment, the Admiral expected to receive surrender messages from the surviving human leaders. Instead, we detected massive launches from the planet's surface. Military vessels, everything. Military ships, civilian transports, cargo freighters, mining vessels, passenger liners, even small personal craft. The humans were throwing everything that could fly into space. The old commander's voice became filled with a mixture of fear and admiration. But these were not the same primitive ships we had seen 3 days earlier. The humans had been busy during our reconnaissance mission. They had modified their vessels with technology stolen from our destroyed ships. How much could they have learned in just 3 days? More than we thought possible. Captain Dan Mitchell of the converted passenger liner New Hope had somehow installed Vraxian shield generators on his ship. Commander Tony Clark of the cargo vessel Star Runner was using our own plasma weapons against us. Zeth Kalar took a longer drink this time. The most shocking thing was their coordination. Hundreds of ships from dozens of different organizations, all working together like parts of a single machine. No confusion, no conflicting orders, no friendly fire incidents. How did they manage such perfect coordination? We still do not know. Our intelligence officers spent years trying to understand human command structures. The best theory is that they share information instantly across their entire force. Every ship knows what every other ship is doing at all times. The young officer made notes on a small electronic pad. What happened when they reached your fleet? They did not attack us the way we expected. Vraxian battle doctrine is based on organized formations, clear lines of engagement, and overwhelming firepower applied at maximum range. Zeth Kalar moved his glass around the table, showing ship positions. The humans swarmed us. Individual ships came from every direction at once. They moved in seemingly random patterns, but each movement was perfectly coordinated with the others. They got inside our formation where our big guns could not target them without hitting our own ships. That sounds like chaos. It was chaos. But it was controlled chaos. Every human ship seemed to know exactly where it needed to be and when. The old veteran's voice grew quiet. I have never seen anything like it. It was like watching a dance, performed by madmen. Were you still commanding a ship at this point? I was given temporary command of the cruiser Brightsword after my destroyer was disabled. The Bright Sword was a heavy warship with advanced weapons and thick armor. I thought I could handle a few converted human cargo ships. Zeth Kalar rubbed the stump of his missing arm. I was wrong. Captain Rick Torres of the mining vessel Iron Mountain came after us with a squadron of converted shuttles. Tiny craft that should have been destroyed by our point defense systems. What made them so dangerous? Torres had equipped his shuttles with crude gravity bombs, nuclear weapons wrapped in salvaged Vraxian gravity manipulation equipment. The combination was unstable and primitive, but it worked. The old commander's voice became strained. Torres led his shuttles in what humans call a suicide run. He knew his ships would be destroyed, but he also knew his attack would cripple our command vessel. He made that choice willingly. Did he succeed? Torres and his entire wing were destroyed by our defensive fire. But one of his gravity bombs detonated close enough to damage our command center. The explosion killed half my bridge crew and destroyed our main computer systems. Zeth Kalar finished his drink and immediately ordered another one. With our command ship damaged, Admiral Kef Morvik tried to coordinate the fleet from his personal battleship. But the humans had been monitoring our communications. They knew which ship was giving orders to the rest of the fleet. They targeted the Admiral's ship. Worse, they captured our communication equipment from disabled vessels and began sending false orders to our ships. Within hours, half our fleet was receiving conflicting commands. Some ships were ordered to advance, while others were told to retreat. Some were given target coordinates that led to friendly fire incidents. The young officer's eyes widened in shock. The humans turned our own command structure against us. Ships that had fought together for decades suddenly could not trust their orders. Captains who had served the Empire for their entire careers began questioning every message they received. Zethkalar's voice became bitter. By the 7th day of fighting, we were not just losing ships to human attacks. We were losing ships to confusion, friendly fire, and equipment failures caused by our own damaged communication systems. How many ships did you lose? 70% of the fleet. The greatest military disaster in Vraxian history. And we lost it to a species that had been using chemical rockets 50 years earlier. The old veteran stared at his new drink without touching it. Admiral Kef Morvik finally realized that we could not win. The humans were not just defeating us in battle. They were learning from every engagement, adapting to every tactic, and growing stronger with each passing day. What did the Admiral do? He surrendered. The proud 7th Fleet of the Vraxian Empire surrendered to a collection of converted human cargo ships and passenger liners. Zethkalar looked directly at Yilthanks. And that is when we learned the most terrifying thing about humans. They do not just want to win. They want to understand everything about their enemies. Zethkalar stared at his untouched drink for a long moment. The bar around them had grown quieter as the evening wore on. Most of the other customers had left, leaving only a few die-hard drinkers and late-shift workers from the station. Admiral Kef Morvik sent the surrender message on the 7th day, the old veteran continued. He used the emergency diplomatic channel that all civilized species recognize. The message was simple. We wanted to negotiate terms for our withdrawal from human space. Sub-Commander Yilthanks waited quietly for him to continue. General Stone's response came within an hour, but it was not what we expected from a primitive species. Zethkalar's voice became hollow. She did not just accept our surrender. She made demands. What kind of demands? Complete technical specifications for all Vraxian military equipment. Navigation charts showing the location of our home worlds and colonies. Communication codes for our entire fleet network. And detailed information about every other species in the galactic community. The young officer's compound eyes widened in shock. She wanted our entire military database. Everything. In exchange, the humans would allow our surviving ships to leave their system safely. If we refused, they would destroy what remained of our fleet and take the information anyway. Zethkalar finally picked up his drink and took a small sip. Admiral Kef Morvik had no choice. We had lost 70% of our ships to a species that should have been conquered in a single day. The humans had proven they could capture our technology and reverse engineer it faster than we thought possible. So the Admiral gave them what they wanted. He transmitted everything. Every secret the Vraxian Empire had accumulated over 300 years of conquest. Star charts, weapon designs, shield frequencies, tactical manuals. The humans absorbed it all. The old commander's remaining arms trembled slightly as he spoke, but that was not the worst part. The worst part was what happened after we surrendered. Yilthanks leaned forward in her chair. What do you mean? The humans could have let us leave immediately. Our ships were crippled, our fleet was broken, and we posed no further threat to Earth. Any other species would have been happy to see us go. Zethkalar paused to watch the bartender cleaning glasses at the far end of the bar. The simple, repetitive motion reminded him of better times. Instead, the humans sent boarding parties to our damaged ships. They said it was to provide medical Assistance to our wounded crews. That sounds reasonable. It would have been reasonable if that was all they did. But the humans did much more than treat our injured. The old veteran's voice became bitter. They studied us. They examined our biology, our psychology, our social structures. They interviewed our crew members about Vraxian culture, history, and politics. They were gathering intelligence. More than intelligence. They were trying to understand everything. About us. How we think. How we make decisions. What motivates us to fight. Zef shook his head slowly. One of their doctors, a female named Carol Adams, spent 6 hours examining my injuries. But she was not just treating my wounds. She was learning about Vraxian anatomy and physiology. The young officer made notes on her electronic pad. What did she discover? Dr. Adams found that our pain responses are different from human pain responses. She learned that certain types of injuries affect our combat effectiveness more than others. She documented which parts of our bodies are most vulnerable to specific kinds of weapons. Zef voice became quiet. When I asked her why she needed to know these things, Dr. Adams smiled and said it was for future reference. She said humans always prepare for the possibility that today's enemy might become tomorrow's enemy. Again, the humans were planning for another war? They were planning for every possibility. Dr. Adams told me that humans have a saying, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. She said it was better to have knowledge and not need it, than to need knowledge and not have it. The old veteran took another sip of his drink. During our 3-day stay in human space, their scientists and engineers examined every piece of Vraxian technology they could find. They took apart our weapons, analyzed our computer systems, and tested our defensive equipment. What did they learn? Everything. By the time we left Earth, the humans understood our technology better than most of our own engineers. They knew how to build our weapons, how to penetrate our defenses, and how to counter our tactics. Zeth remaining hands clenched into fists. But the most disturbing thing was how they treated our captured crew members. The humans did not torture or abuse our prisoners. Instead, they talked to them. Long, friendly conversations about life in the Vraxian Empire. What kind of conversations? Commander Helen Price, who had led the boarding party that captured part of our fleet, spent hours talking to our prisoners about Vraxian society. She asked about our government, our economy, our military training, our family structures. The old commander's voice became strained. Price told our captured officers that she wanted to understand why Vraxians choose to conquer other species. She wanted to know what drives our empire to expand across the galaxy. She said understanding enemy motivations was just as important as understanding enemy technology. What did your officers tell her? Everything. Price was skilled at making our people feel comfortable. She provided good food, medical care, and entertainment for our prisoners. She treated them with respect and courtesy. In return, they answered her questions willingly. Zef finished his drink and set the empty glass down carefully. When we finally left human space, we carried more than just the survivors of a defeated fleet. We carried the knowledge that humans had learned everything about us in just 10 days. What happened when you returned to Vraxian space? The Empire was in shock. The 7th Fleet had been considered invincible. News of our defeat spread quickly through the military and civilian populations. For the first time in our history, people began to question whether the Vraxian Empire was truly superior to all other species. The young officer stopped taking notes and looked directly at Zef. Is that why you retired, Commander? I retired because I could no longer fight for an empire that had been so completely outmatched by a species we considered primitive. His voice became very quiet. But that is not why I drink alone in bars on forgotten space stations. Then, why? Because within 1 year of our defeat, human ships began appearing in Vraxian space. Not as conquerors, but as traders, diplomats, and mercenaries. They came offering friendship, trade agreements, and military assistance. Zefkalar's compound eyes focused on something far beyond the walls of the bar. The species that had destroyed. Our fleet was now offering to help us fight our other enemies. The humans had learned everything about us, defeated us completely, and then decided they wanted to be our allies. Did the Empire accept their offers? Many worlds did. Human military advisors began training Vraxian forces in new combat techniques. Human engineers helped upgrade our defensive systems. Human diplomats mediated disputes between Vraxian colonies and other species. The old veteran stood up slowly, his movements stiff with age and old injuries. The most terrifying thing about humans, Sub-Commander, is not their ability to wage war. It is their ability to turn enemies into friends after defeating them completely. He dropped some coins on the table to pay for his drinks. They did not just conquer us, they converted us. And most Vraxians never even realized it was happening. Zefkalar looked down at Yilthanks one last time. You asked me about humans, youngling. Here is my advice. If you ever encounter them in battle, surrender immediately. If you try to fight them, they will learn everything about you while they destroy your fleet. And then they will offer to help you rebuild. He limped toward the exit, then paused. The humans are still out there, Sub-Commander. Still learning, still adapting, still growing stronger. And they remember everything about everyone they have ever fought. The old alien disappeared into the corridor, leaving Yilthanks alone with her thoughts and the growing realization that everything she had learned about humans in military school was dangerously wrong.